First time I realized my own mother could hate me. It happened over a cracked iPhone screen at our kitchen table, and when she silently mouthed the words, I stayed quiet while something in me broke. She thought I could not hear her. She thought I was gone inside my own head. And the worst part is, I did not correct her. My name is Lorelai. I am 26, and I work as a patient advocate at a county hospital. I spend my days helping strangers translate pain into words doctors will take seriously. Back then, though, I could barely translate my own family. It started my junior year of high school. The winter, everyone in my town got sick and kept going anyway. I had been fighting a brutal ear infection, the kind that makes your skull throb like there is a drumline trapped behind your eyes. One morning in class, the world suddenly went underwater. The teacher's voice turned into a distant vibration. I watched mouths move, saw laughter, saw the sharp little expressions people make when they assume you are not part of the conversation. The nurse drove me to urgent care. The doctor said fluid, swelling, damage, and that I might be temporarily deaf in both ears. 2 weeks, maybe more. Rest, antibiotics, no headphones, no swimming. He talked like it was a simple problem with a simple fix. But when you lose sound, you start noticing everything else. In those 2 weeks, I learned to read lips because I had no choice. I watched the curve of a word before it landed. I watched people's eyes flicker toward each other in a way I had never paid attention to. And I learned something that made me feel sick in a way antibiotics could not touch. People say the truest things when they believe they will never be held accountable. My hearing came back one afternoon while I was brushing my teeth. The faucet roared to life in my ears so violently I almost cried. I stood there, dripping toothpaste, trembling, and I told myself I would go downstairs and announce it. I would laugh. My mom would hug me. My dad would say he knew I would bounce back. My older sister would tease me and then ask if I was okay. That is what I believe families did. Then I walked into the hallway and I heard my mother's voice through the cracked door of my parents' bedroom. Clear, normal, casual, like she was discussing the weather. She's behind again, she said, the syllables sharp as clipped nails. She always is. My father answered with a sigh I had heard my whole life, the sigh that meant I was work. It's probably just a phase, he said. She makes everything dramatic. My hand hovered over the doorknob. My throat tightened. I could have walked in and said, I can hear you. I'm right here. I could have forced them to see me. Instead, I froze. Something in me decided in that quiet hallway that I needed to know the truth all the way, not just the edges of it. If they could say that when they thought I was deaf, what else were they saying when I was not supposed to be listening? So I did not tell anyone my hearing had returned. At school, I played it carefully. I leaned into the routines I had already built. I kept my eyes on mouths. I nodded a second late. I smiled when people smiled. Teachers adjusted. Friends leaned closer. It was not hard to become invisible in a way that felt polite. My best friend at the time was Greer. She had been my person since middle school. We had matching hoodies, inside jokes, and the kind of friendship where you share secrets in the dark, like you are swapping oxygen. The day after my hearing returned, Greer sat next to me at lunch, her face angled toward mine in a way that looked supportive. Across the table, a girl named Briar asked her something, and Greer responded without turning fully, like she assumed I would not track it. Greer's mouth shaped the words, slow and unmistakable. She mouthed, she is so needy. Briar's eyebrows lifted. Greer rolled her eyes and mouthed, it is exhausting pretending to care. I stared at my lunch tray. I kept chewing. I kept breathing. My fingers gripped the plastic fork so tightly my knuckles blanched. In the moment, I did not cry. I did not snap. I did not even look at Greer. I stayed quiet, and I memorized her mouth like it was a crime scene. At home, it was worse because it was constant. My sister, Sienna, was 2 years older and perfect in the way that made adults soften. Straight A's, captain of her soccer team, early admission to a prestigious program. She had a laugh that made my parents glow, like they could bask in it and forget every other disappointment. I used to think Sienna and I were close. I thought she was strict with me because she cared. I thought her advice was tough love. I thought if I tried hard enough, she would see me. One evening, she brought her boyfriend over to study. His name was Wilder, and he had that confident, polished look like he had never been embarrassed in public. They sat at the kitchen island with their laptops open and their drinks sweating little rings onto my mother's coasters. I was in the living room with a textbook, playing the part of the dutiful younger sister. Wilder looked at me, then back to Sienna. His lips formed the question like it was harmless curiosity. Is she always like this? Sienna smiled. Not a kind smile. A private one. Then she mouthed, pretty much. Wilder mouthed, your parents baby her. Sienna laughed silently, her shoulders bouncing. Because she is the disappointment, she mouthed. They gave up. Wilder mouthed, doesn't that bother you? Sienna's answer was so quick it felt rehearsed. No, she mouthed. It makes my life easier. They expect nothing from her and everything from me. I sat there with my book open, my eyes fixed on the page, while a slow heat rose under my skin. Shame first, because some part of me wondered if they were right. Then anger, because another part of me knew they were cruel. Then fear, because if this is what my sister said when she thought I could not hear, what was she capable of saying when she wanted something? I went to bed that night and stared at the ceiling until dawn. My heart kept doing this strange stutter, like it was tripping over itself. And somewhere between one breath and the next, I made a decision. If they wanted to believe I was powerless, I would let them. If they wanted to talk freely, I would give them space. And I would remember everything. At first, it was just notes. Little observations typed into my phone, hidden behind an innocuous folder name. Dates written out in full words because I told myself I was not making a case. I was just trying to stay sane. Then it escalated because people got comfortable. My parents started having conversations in front of me like I was furniture. My mother would mouth to my father over the sink, she is falling behind again. My father would mouth back, at least Sienna is solid. My mother would mouth, we can't keep wasting money on tutors. My father would mouth, maybe she will qualify for something. They never looked at my face while they did it. They looked at countertops and bills and the calendar on the fridge, like my future was a chore to reschedule. The first micro twist came when I realized it was not just me they were talking about. It was money, it was reputation, it was control. My family was not wealthy, but we were comfortable. My father owned a small contracting business. My mother ran the office. Sienna was the story they told at church and at family dinners. I was the part they edited out. One afternoon, I walked into the kitchen and saw a stack of paperwork on the island. It was folded into a neat pile and topped with a sticky note. My mother's handwriting was sharp, slanted, impatient. The headline on the top page made my stomach drop. Guardianship. It was not finalized, but it was being discussed. There were highlighted paragraphs. There were questions scribbled in the margins. There were printed articles about adult dependence and financial responsibility. They were not planning for my independence. They were planning for my containment. I took my phone out. I pretended to be checking making a message. I took photos, careful and steady, one page at a time, the way I do now when I help patients document neglect. Then I put the papers back exactly as I found them. I did not confront them. I did not slam anything. I simply became more obedient, more compliant, more quiet. That was the second twist, and it was subtle. The more I acted like I accepted their view of me, the more they escalated their plans. Sienna started using my so-called disability as a weapon in conversations, where she wanted sympathy. At family gatherings, she would touch my shoulder and smile at relatives like she was a saint. Then, when she thought no one was watching, she would mouth to her friends that I was a burden. Greer, my best friend, started treating me like a chore on a checklist. She would sit with me in the hallway and text with other people at the same time, mouthing that I was lucky she still bothered. Teachers spoke over me. Counselors smiled at me and then mouthed different stories to each other when I was just a few feet away, and through all of it, I stayed quiet because I was building something they could not see. I downloaded a transcription app. I learned how to place my phone in a bag so the microphone faced outward. I learned which rooms in my house carried sound the best. I learned that people will confess anything if they believe you are harmless. I became calm in a way that scared even me. I stopped begging for attention. I stopped arguing. I stopped trying to be understood. I said okay with a small smile and let them think they had won. By the time senior year rolled around, my parents had stopped talking about my college plans entirely. They talked about Sienna's scholarships and Sienna's future apartment and Sienna's internships. When relatives asked me about my future, my mother would smile too brightly and say, "We are taking it one day at a time," like I was a hospice patient. Inside, I felt like I was suffocating in plain sight, but I kept going. I kept collecting. I kept swallowing the humiliation and turning it into something sharp and organized. Tonight, everything shifted toward the final break happened at a family dinner at my aunt's house. The table was crowded. The food was loud with smells. Everyone was talking at once. My father was in a good mood, the kind that makes him boast without noticing. He leaned toward my uncle and, with me sitting right there, he said something that did not even require lip reading. He said it out loud because he forgot himself. "We're lucky," he said. "At least Sienna is normal." I let my face stay blank. I lifted my glass. I took a sip of water and felt it slide down my throat like ice. My mother nudged him under the table, eyes wide. And then she glanced at me with a practiced pity. She mouthed, she didn't hear. And I realized then that my silence had made them reckless. That was the moment I knew I had enough. Quick pause outside the story. Some nights I'm editing and it gets lonely. And your comments are honestly what keep me going. Like, subscribe and tell me your city, state, or country. Alright, now let me take you back. It was late spring, warm enough that the air inside our house felt heavy. My parents were throwing a party for Sienna. She had just been accepted into a competitive program, and they were treating it like a national holiday. The living room filled with relatives I barely knew. My mother arranged trays of food like she was performing competence. My father drank too much and laughed too loudly. Sienna floated through the room with Wilder at her side, soaking up praise like sunlight. I stayed in my usual corner with a polite smile, the quiet sister, the one people patted on the shoulder and forgot. Then I saw my parents slip into the hallway with my uncle. They thought no one was paying attention. They thought I was staring at the floor like I always did, but I watched their mouths in the mirror by the front door, clear as a movie. My father mouthed, "We are relieved." My uncle mouthed, "About what?" My mother mouthed, "At least one of our kids turned out right." My father mouthed, "We can put the college fund where it actually matters." My uncle mouthed something that made me lean forward slightly. "Lorelei," he mouthed. "What about her?" My mother's mouth tightened. Then she mouthed words that made my fingers go numb around the napkin in my lap. "She will qualify for assistance." She mouthed, "Disability. Something. We can't carry her forever." My father mouthed, "We won't have to. She won't be our problem." My uncle looked uncomfortable. He mouthed, "That's your daughter." My father mouthed back, "We did our best." My mother mouthed, "Sienna is the one who will make us proud." I felt my heartbeat pounding behind my ears. The irony so bitter I almost laughed. They had been planning my life like a budget line. They were not just disappointed. They were preparing to erase me. I could have stood up right then. I could have made a scene. I could have screamed until the whole room shook. But my revenge was never going to be loud. I took my phone from my pocket and turned on the recording function, the one I had practiced 100 times. I held it loosely in my palm like it was nothing. I kept my face calm. I watched them continue, unaware, while the little timer on my screen ran forward. Then my father mouthed something else, something even worse, and I felt my stomach flip. He mouthed, "We should talk to a lawyer." My mother mouthed, "About what?" My father mouthed, "About paperwork. So she can't fight it later." My uncle mouthed, "Fight what?" My father's mouth formed the phrase slowly, like he was proud of it. "Guardianship," he mouthed. My vision tunneled. The room around me blurred at the edges. The laughter, the music, the clinking dishes, all of it turned into background noise to the one clear reality. They were about to take my adulthood from me on paper, and they were doing it while celebrating my sister. I stayed seated. I stayed quiet. I let the recording run. I let them dig deeper because they thought I was too broken to understand what they were saying. But inside, I was already stepping onto a path they could not follow. I slid my phone back into my pocket, stood up slowly, and walked toward the hallway with the calmest smile I have ever worn. I walked past the hallway mirror like I was just going to the bathroom. My mother's eyes flicked to me, then away. She gave my uncle a tight smile that said, "See, she's harmless." I stopped at the end of the hall where the sound from the living room softened. My parents and my uncle were still huddled near the coat closet, half shadowed by the lamp. Sienna was across the room laughing at something Wilder said, her hand on his arm like she owned the air around him. I turned, faced the three of them, and did something small. I waved. My mother froze. My father blinked like he had forgotten I could see it all. My uncle looked relieved, like maybe he could finally talk to me directly instead of around me. I smiled and mouthed slowly, clearly, with exaggerated care, the way people do when they want to appear compassionate. I mouthed, "Everything okay?" My father forced a grin and mouthed, "Yes, go sit." So I nodded, obedient. I mouthed, "Okay," and I went right back to my corner like a well-trained dog. That was the first part of my revenge, not exposing them, not yet. Just letting them believe the lie they preferred, so they would keep talking. I could feel my whole body vibrating with contained rage. My skin felt hot, like I was standing too close to a fire. But on the outside, I looked calm. I looked small. I looked like the version of me they had already decided was real. They continued their conversation as soon as they thought I had stopped paying attention. My father mouthed, "We need to do it before she turns 18. My mother mouthed, "She already is." My father mouthed, "And we need to move fast, before she gets ideas." My uncle mouthed, "What ideas?" My mother mouthed, "Independence." The word independence was shaped like something disgusting in her mouth. I watched it, and a memory hit me so hard my eyes stung. When I was little, my mother used to tell me I was her brave girl. She used to call me that when I climbed trees, when I skinned skinned my knees when I insisted I could do things myself. She loved my independence back then, when it was cute and controllable. Now it was a threat. I sat there and kept smiling politely at relatives as they wandered by, but inside my mind started moving with a clarity that scared me. I stopped thinking like a daughter and started thinking like someone who had to survive. I needed my proof safe. I needed a witness. I needed a plan that did not rely on anyone suddenly growing a conscience. The party dragged on. My aunt asked me if I wanted more food, and I nodded. My cousin tried to get me to play a game, and I smiled and pretended not to understand. People praised Sienna until her cheeks glowed. My mother floated like a queen, collecting compliments. And every time she passed me, she gave me that soft, pitying look like she was a good person for tolerating me. I caught Sienna glancing at me twice, not with concern, but with irritation, like my presence was a stain on her celebration. Near the end of the night, I slipped away to the laundry room under the excuse of needing quiet. It was the only place in our house where the hum of the machines could cover the fact that I was breathing too fast. Opened my phone and listened to the recording through the tiniest volume, pressing the speaker close to my ear. My father's voice came through, clear enough to make my stomach turn. My mother's voice followed, my uncle's uneasy replies. It was real. And it was worse than I remembered. I pressed my forehead against the cool metal of the washing machine and stayed there until the shaking in my hands slowed. Then I did something I had never done before. I texted someone outside my family. Not Greer, not anyone from school. I did not trust my friends anymore. I did not trust anyone who cared about popularity or belonging. I needed someone who understood paper, procedure, consequences. I texted my guidance counselor's assistant, Mrs. Holland, because she was the only adult at school who had ever looked me in the eye like I mattered. She had once waited with me after a panic attack in the bathroom, rubbing my back in slow circles while I tried to breathe. I typed, "Can we talk Monday after school? Private, it's urgent." I stared at the message. My thumb hovered, then I sent it. When I came back into the living room, the party was thinning. My father was ushering people out with loud thank yous. My mother was collecting plates. Sienna and Wilder were by the stairs, whispering and smiling. As I passed them, Wilder's mouth moved. He mouthed, "She's creeping me out." Sienna's lips curved. She mouthed, "Ignore her." Wilder mouthed, "What if she's faking?" Sienna's smile flickered. Then she mouthed, "She's not smart enough." I kept walking. I did not react. But inside, something snapped into place. They had no idea who I was becoming. After the last guest left and the door clicked shut, my mother's shoulders sagged with exhaustion. She turned and looked at me like she had forgotten I existed, then remembered and got annoyed about it. She mouthed, "Go to bed." I mouthed, "Okay." My father headed toward the kitchen. My mother followed him, and I trailed behind at a distance like a ghost. At the sink, my mother started washing a glass. My father opened the fridge and pulled out a beer. He leaned his hip against the counter, relaxed now that the audience was gone. My mother mouthed, "Did you see her staring at us?" My father mouthed, "She stares at everything. It's a blank face." My mother mouthed, "I hate that blank face." My father mouthed, "She's a constant reminder." My mother mouthed, "A reminder of what?" My father mouthed, "That we didn't get two good ones." I felt my throat tighten. My nails dug into my palm. The room smelled like dish soap and leftover meatballs. The normalcy of it made the cruelty feel even sharper. Like they could say these things while standing in the same kitchen where I used to make cookies with my mom as a kid. My mother mouthed, "We should talk to Sienna. She needs to be ready." My father mouthed, "Ready for what?" My mother mouthed, "To take over when we're done." My father mouthed, "She will. She's responsible." My mother mouthed, "We can't let Lorelai ruin her future." My father mouthed, "Lorelai can't ruin anything. She can barely function." My mother mouthed, "Exactly. That's why the paperwork matters. Make it legal. Make it final." My father nodded and mouthed, "Monday. We call the lawyer." Monday. The word landed like a deadline. They were not talking about an idea. They were talking about a schedule. I excused myself in the same quiet way I always did and went upstairs. Every step measured. In my room, I closed the door, sat on my bed, and stared at my hands. I thought about guardianship forms on the kitchen island. I thought about my mother's handwriting, sharp and slanted. I thought about my father's mouth forming the word legal like it was a victory. Then I did the second part of my revenge. I did not stop their plan. I let it happen. The next morning at breakfast, I acted softer than usual. I kept my eyes down. I let my shoulders curve in. I made myself look small enough to dismiss. My mother watched me with that satisfied expression people get when they believe they have confirmed their beliefs. She mouthed to my father while stirring her coffee, "See, she's drifting." My father mouthed, "Good, less resistance." Sienna came down the stairs in a hoodie, hair in a messy knot, still basking in the attention from the night before. She poured cereal into a bowl without looking at me. She mouthed, "Don't embarrass me at school." I mouthed, "Okay." That was the third part of my revenge. I agreed. I stayed quiet. I gave them zero friction. Friction would have made them careful. At school on Monday, I walked through the halls like a sleepwalker. It was easy to play the part now because the feelings were real. My chest hurt. My stomach felt hollow. My body was tired from carrying a secret heavier than any backpack. After last period, I went to the guidance office. Mrs. Holland was at her desk, glasses perched on her nose, sorting papers. She glanced up, saw me, and her face shifted into immediate concern. She stood and came around the desk. "Hey," she said gently, her voice low. "You wanted to talk?" I sat in the chair across from her and did something I had not done in years. I spoke. My voice came out steady, which surprised me. Like my body had already decided this was an emergency and it was going to perform. "I can hear," I said quietly. Mrs. Holland blinked. "What?" "I can hear," I repeated. I could hear again after the infection. "I never told anyone." Her mouth opened slightly, then she closed it, processing. "Why would you?" "Lorelai, why?" I swallowed. The shame rose first, hot and choking. Then the anger pushed it aside. "Because people talk," I said. "And my family has been planning things." "Bad things?" Mrs. Holland leaned forward, her hands clasped. "Tell me." So I did. Not everything, not yet. I gave her just enough to make her understand the shape of the danger. I told her about the guardianship papers. I told her about the college fund shifting entirely to Sienna. I told her about the phrase my father used. "Done. We won't have to. She won't be our problem." Mrs. Holland's eyes darkened. "Do you have proof?" I slid my phone across the desk. Her face tightened as she listened to a clip. She paused it, then listened again, jaw set. She looked up at me slowly, like she was seeing a different person than the girl who used to sit in her office with tear-streaked cheeks. "This is serious," she said. "I know," I whispered. Mrs. Holland exhaled and spoke with careful control. "Okay, here's what we do. We do not confront them directly. We stay calm. We document. We get you support. We make sure you are protected." I nodded. I could feel fear pressing against my ribs like a fist. "They're calling a lawyer tonight," I said. I heard them. "They're moving." Mrs. Holland's eyes flicked to the clock on the wall. Then she pulled a notepad closer and started writing. "You're 18, she said. "That matters. You have have rights. Guardianship is not a casual thing. They can't just decide it. But people try. And families can be persuasive. My throat tightened. They'll say I can't handle life. Mrs. Holland met my eyes. Then we show the truth, not with drama. With evidence. A strange relief washed through me. For the first time in years, an adult was standing on my side in a way that felt solid. Then she added, there's something else. If they've been discussing this with your sister might try to bait you. She might try to get you to react so they can label you unstable. A chill ran down my spine. Because I could already imagine Sienna doing exactly that. Mrs. Holland handed my phone back. Keep your recordings backed up somewhere they can't access. Email them to yourself. Store them in a secure cloud. And Lorelai, she paused, voice softening. Promise me you will not handle this alone. I nodded, but my hands were shaking again. What if they find out? Mrs. Holland's expression was steady. Then we're ready. I left her office with my heart pounding, walking out into the late afternoon sunlight like I was stepping into a new life. I got home before my parents. I went straight to my room, opened my laptop, and created a new email account with a password no one could guess. I forwarded every recording and every photo of paperwork to it, then deleted the sent messages from my main account. After that, I sat on the edge of my bed and waited. When my parents came home, they were in a good mood. That should have terrified me, but it made me colder instead. My mother called up the stairs for me to come down. I did. I stood in the kitchen doorway, shoulders curved, eyes lowered. My father mouthed, we have an appointment. My mother mouthed, tonight. Sienna walked in behind them, bright-eyed, energized, like she was part of something important. She saw me and her smile sharpened. Then she did exactly what Mrs. Holland warned me she would do. Sienna stepped close, lowered her voice so it would look like kindness, and said out loud, hey Lorelai. Hearing her speak my name like that, like she had no idea, made my skin prickle. She leaned in, eyes glittering with a dare. Do you know what we're talking about? I held my face blank. I kept my mouth slightly parted, the way they expected. I mouthed, no. Sienna's lips curled. Good, she said quietly, and her smile widened as if she had just confirmed something. My mother glanced at my father satisfied. My father nodded once. They thought I was too far gone to understand what was about to happen to me, and I stood there, silent, with my proof backed up and my plan already moving, letting them walk straight into the trap they built for themselves. They led me into the dining room like it was a meeting, not an ambush. The overhead light was too bright, throwing hard shadows under everyone's eyes. My mother set a legal-sized folder in the center of the table, like she was placing down a dessert. My father sat at the head, shoulders squared, performing authority. Sienna leaned against the counter with her arms crossed, watching me the way you watch a problem you expect someone else to solve. I sat. I folded my hands in my lap. I kept my gaze soft and unfocused, the way they preferred. My father started speaking slowly, out loud, like he was explaining something to a child. We've been thinking about what's best for you, he said. My mother nodded with that tight smile she used at church. We just want to make sure you're taken care of. Sienna didn't bother with the smile. She said, this is for everyone's peace. They were acting like my life was a noisy appliance they were finally unplugging. My father slid the folder toward me. I stared at it like I didn't understand. He took that as confirmation. He continued, there are some forms, nothing scary, just paperwork. It will help us handle things for you. School, doctors, finances. It's better this way. My mother added, you won't have to stress about grown-up decisions. Grown-up decisions. I almost laughed. I could have told them I had been making grown-up decisions for years. Like deciding not to collapse at lunch while my best friend called me needy. Like deciding not to scream when my sister called me pathetic. Like deciding to save evidence instead of begging for love. But my revenge was quiet, so I mouthed, okay, and let my voice stay silent. My father's face softened in triumph. He reached for a pen and placed it beside the folder. See, this is easy. We'll go step by step. My mother leaned forward and tapped the first page, indicating where a signature would go. She made her mouth very clear as if she was proud of her patience. She mouthed, sign here. I picked up the pen. Sienna's eyes sharpened, satisfied. My father's shoulders relaxed. My mother exhaled like she had been holding her breath for years. Then I did something so small they didn't notice at first. I slid the folder a few inches to the side. My father blinked. No, honey, right there. I looked at his mouth, then at the folder, then back at his mouth. I tilted my head, the performance of confusion, and I spoke, softly, calmly. Not loud enough to be dramatic, but clear enough to stop the room. I need you to read it out loud. Silence hit like a physical thing. My mother's fingers froze on the paper. Sienna straightened. My father's eyes widened in that quick flash people get when the script changes. My father tried to recover. You don't need that. It's complicated. I need you to read it out loud. I repeated. Same tone, same calm. I want to understand. My mother's mouth tightened. Sweetheart, you won't understand all the legal language. I kept my face neutral. Try. Sienna cut in, voice sharper. Why are you being difficult? I didn't look at her. I kept my eyes on my father. Read it, I said. Out loud. My father's jaw worked. He reached for the first page and started reading, stumbling through the formal language. His voice sounded wrong in the bright room, like he was impersonating someone responsible. As he read, I watched his face. Every time he hit a phrase about control and authority, his eyes flickered away from me. My mother stared at the table. Sienna's mouth pulled tight like she was furious. I was making them perform their own cruelty. Then my father reached the part that mattered. The part about decision-making power, about medical consent, about financial authority, about restricting certain freedoms without my approval. His voice faltered. He swallowed and tried to keep going. I let him. When he finished the paragraph, I asked one small question, the kind that sounds innocent and lets the truth reveal itself. So after this, I said, I can't sign my own school forms. I can't decide where I go. I can't choose my own doctor. You can. My father forced a smile. It's not like that. It's just support. I tilted my head. Then why does it say you can override my choices? My mother's eyes flashed. Lorelai, you're misinterpreting. I turned toward her slowly. Then correct me. Out loud. My father's hand tightened around the paper. You're getting upset, he said, trying to reposition me as unstable. This is why we're doing this. I breathed in slowly and let my shoulders drop, like I was relaxing. I'm not upset, I said. I'm being careful. Sienna laughed once, sharp and mean. Careful? You can't even function without someone holding your hand. I looked at her for a beat, and I let a very small smile form, not a happy one, the kind that says you just confirmed exactly what I needed. Then I stood up and walked out of the dining room without another word. My mother's voice snapped. Where are you going? I didn't answer. I went upstairs, closed my bedroom door, and locked it. I sat on my bed, took my phone out, and dialed the number Mrs. Holland had given me for an advocacy hotline in our county. It connected to a recorded message, then a calm voice. I gave them my name. I explained briefly what my parents were attempting. I told them I was an adult. I told them I had evidence they were doing it under false assumptions about my my capacity. The woman on the line asked if I was safe for the night. I said yes for now. Then I emailed Mrs. Holland from my new account with one sentence. They tried tonight. I asked them to read it out loud. They panicked. She replied quickly, "Do not sign anything. Do not argue. We meet tomorrow. Bring everything." Downstairs, I could hear the muffled sound of movement, the way people move when plans fail and no one wants to admit it. My mother called my name again. Then she stopped, and the silence that followed was loaded. That night, I barely slept. I kept picturing my father's pen on the table. I kept hearing my sisters laugh. I kept tasting the bitter satisfaction of watching them stumble. In the morning, I went to school like nothing happened. I kept my performance on. I nodded. I smiled. I looked small. My mother watched me leave the house with narrowed eyes, like she could sense the shift, but didn't know where it was coming from. After school, I went straight to Mrs. Holland's office. I didn't sit this time. I stood because sitting felt like asking permission. She looked at my face and understood immediately. "They tried," she said. I nodded. "They tried to make me sign." Mrs. Holland's jaw tightened. "Okay, we do the next step." She walked me to the principal's office, then to the school social worker. The social worker listened, eyes wide, as I played short clips. Not everything, just enough. The words about overriding my choices. The word guardianship. The phrase, "not our problem." The tone that made it clear this wasn't care. It was disposal. The principal called in a district advocate. The advocate called in someone from Adult Protective Services. Everything moved quickly after that. Not because people suddenly cared about me as a person, but because there were rules, and my parents were breaking them. That's the part most people don't understand. Sometimes you don't win because someone loves you. You win because the system finally sees paper. Within days, I had an appointment with an independent evaluator, someone trained to assess whether an adult could manage their own life. I walked into that office terrified because my whole family had been describing me as incapable for years, and a small part of me still feared it might stick. The evaluator asked me questions. I answered calmly. I explained my school schedule, my medication history, my plans. I showed my grades, which were not perfect but were mine. I showed my part-time job pay stubs. I explained that my hearing was fine, that the disability was assumed, not confirmed. Then I did the smartest thing I had ever done. I handed over the recordings and the photos, but not as an emotional confession. As evidence, organized, time-stamped, labeled, clean. The evaluator's face hardened as she listened. She looked up at me and said, "You're not the problem." I swallowed so hard it hurt. I nodded once because I didn't trust my voice. A week later, my parents were served with notice. Not dramatic, not loud, just a formal document that let them know any attempt at guardianship would be scrutinized and that there were concerns about coercion. That night, the atmosphere at home was poison. My father tried to corner me in the kitchen. He spoke gently, the way manipulators do when they realize force won't work. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. I looked at him and let my expression stay blank. "I'm protecting myself." My mother came in behind him, eyes sharp, voice trembling with anger. "You're humiliating us." I kept my tone even. "You did that." Sienna stormed in like she wanted to set something on fire. "You're ruining everything," she hissed. I looked at her and said the one thing that made her freeze. "No," I said. "I'm letting everyone see what you already are." I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I didn't call her names. I simply stated it like a fact. Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked at my parents, expecting them to fix it. They couldn't. Here's the twist that sealed it. My uncle, the same one from the party, showed up at our house 2 days later. He asked to speak to me alone. My parents hovered in the doorway like guards, pretending they were concerned. My uncle's eyes looked tired. He held out a folder. "I didn't know what to do," he said quietly, "but I can't pretend I didn't hear them. I asked for copies of the college fund accounts. They refused, so I checked something else." He opened the folder and slid out a document. It was a life insurance policy, and I was not listed. Sienna was. My parents had been building a future where, if something happened to them, Sienna would be protected and I would be left with nothing. Not because they forgot, because they chose it. My hands went cold as I stared at the paper. I expected pain, but what I felt was something cleaner. Something final. My uncle watched my face. "I'm sorry," he said. "I can't change what they are, but I can change what I do." He offered me a place to stay. He offered to help me move my things quietly. He offered to be a witness if it came to court. He didn't wrap it in pity. He treated me like a person. I nodded once. "Okay," I said. That weekend, while my parents were at one of Sienna's soccer games, I packed. Not everything, just what mattered. Clothes, documents, my laptop, the small keepsakes I actually loved. I left my childhood trophies on the shelf because they weren't mine anymore. They were decorations in a house that never saw me. I left a note on my bed. One sentence. "Do not contact me except through my advocate." When they came home and realized I was gone, the calls started. The messages flooded in. My mother cried. My father demanded. Sienna accused. Their emotions came in waves, but none of them apologized for what they actually did. They apologized for losing access. At my uncle's house, I slept for the first time in years. Not perfectly, but deeply enough to feel my body unclench. The next months were a blur of paperwork, meetings, and quiet rebuilding. The guardianship attempt collapsed under scrutiny. My parents backed off when they realized there were consequences. They started telling relatives I was confused, rebellious, influenced by school staff, but the recordings did what truth does when it's organized. It didn't need my voice to be loud. It only needed to exist. I graduated. I got accepted into a state university with a scholarship and a part-time job lined up. I moved into a tiny dorm room that smelled like industrial cleaner and freedom. The first night there, I sat on the bed and listened to the hum of the air conditioner. I cried not because I missed them, but because I could finally stop pretending. Sienna's life did not turn out the way my parents promised it would. Without me as a comparison point, without a broken sister to make her look heroic, she cracked under her own pressure. She switched majors twice. She blamed professors. She blamed roommates. She blamed everyone. My parents tried to prop her up the way they always had, but it didn't work the same when there was no one left to sacrifice. Years passed. I built a life piece by piece. I learned the difference between being quiet and being powerless. I learned how to sit with anger without letting it own me. I learned how to recognize manipulation, by the way. It tries to make you doubt your own memory. Then, one afternoon, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It was my mother. It said, "We miss you. We didn't understand. You misunderstood. Come home." I stared at the screen for a long time, feeling nothing at first. Then I felt it. Not pain, not longing, relief. Because I realized the final twist wasn't that they were cruel. I already knew that. The final twist was that I no longer needed them to admit it. I opened my secure email account. I forwarded one recording to the district advocate, the one where my father said I wouldn't be their problem. Then I forwarded another, where my mother discussed overriding my choices. I didn't attach a message. I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I simply let the truth land where it belonged. 2 weeks later, my parents stopped contacting me. Not because they suddenly respected my boundaries, but because someone with authority told them to. Quiet consequences, professional consequences, the kind that don't make a scene but change the shape of a person's options. I finished my degree. I went into work that made sense of what happened to me. I built friendships with people who didn't love me for being convenient. I dated someone who asked permission before touching my hand, who looked at my face when I spoke, who never once treated my pain like a burden. And on the day I got my first real job offer, I went to a store and bought myself a bracelet. Nothing expensive, just something simple, something I chose. I slipped it onto my wrist and stared at it for a long moment. Then I smiled, because the life my family tried to take from me was the very life I built, quietly without them. Now, stepping out of the story for a minute, I want to say something in my own voice. This part is hard to explain without sounding dramatic, but I'll try. When people think you're powerless, they start telling the truth on accident. Not because they're brave, because they feel safe. They think there's no cost. And sometimes the most dangerous thing isn't the cruelty itself. It's the way it trains you to doubt your own instincts. It makes you ask, am I overreacting? Am I imagining it? Am I the problem? That's why evidence matters. Not for revenge, for clarity, for your own sanity. Quiet choices can be louder than arguments. Walking away can be the most honest sentence you ever speak. And if you're listening to this and something in your life feels off, trust that feeling. You don't have to explode. You can get calm. You can get organized. You can get safe. And one day, you'll look back and realize the strongest thing you ever did was stop begging to be loved by people who only wanted you manageable. The last time I heard my mother's voice, it wasn't an apology. It was a voicemail asking if I could help Sienna with her resume, and I deleted it without shaking.